Hello, ready for your next take-home project? We have learned so much already. We've learned about the primary colors and the secondary colors. We learned about texture and form and warm and cool colors. And today we're going to talk about shapes. There are two types of shapes in the art world: geometric shapes and organic shapes. Geometric shapes are those shapes that have names, like squares, rectangles, triangles, circles. Anytime anybody sees those shapes, they know exactly what their name is. Those are geometric shapes. Organic shapes, on the other hand, are kind of wild, crazy shapes that you might be able to see a name or pick a name for it yourself, like a cloud shape or a starburst shape, but other people might call those organic shapes different names. Somebody else looking at organic shapes might think of different names for them. Like, instead of a cloud shape, they might say that it looks more like a sheep shape. You see what I'm saying? So geometric shapes have names. Organic shapes do not really have official names. So we're going to use shapes today to make art, just like this guy. His name was Henri Matisse. He was a French artist who lived about 100 years ago, and he was a painter. And he really loved to use shapes, both organic and geometric. So today, we are going to create a beautiful artwork that honors this beautiful goldfish picture that Henri Matisse made with shapes. Let's start with geometric shapes first. We are going to create the background of our goldfish picture with our large poster board and rectangles of construction paper. Our job is to literally cover this entire large piece of white paper with geometric shapes. So there's a purple rectangle. You can also use scissors to change the shapes if you want. You could cut a skinnier rectangle, or cut out a triangle, or a square. But the key here is to only cut out geometric shapes that have names. And here's why. The geometric shapes fit together like a puzzle, easier than organic shapes. We want to cover the whole paper as quick as we can. We don't want to spend hours on this part. And so to make it easier, we're going to stick with geometric shapes so that we can put it together kind of like a puzzle here. And it's definitely okay to overlap your construction paper. I don't expect every single piece to fit perfectly, so you might have to just cover up some of the other shapes by overlapping them. And when every white space is covered, we're ready for the next step. This part takes kind of a long time. But when you're finally all done, it's time to use your black piece of paper to create a table for your fishbowl to stand on. You're going to draw the fishbowl on the black paper with pencil, and you'll still be able to see it even though it's black paper. Check it out. You are going to draw the table using geometric shapes. The first shape you need to draw is an oval. If you make a mistake, just erase it and retry it. When you've got the oval right, then you are going to draw two rectangles going down for the legs of the table. So here are my rectangles coming off of the oval, both geometric shapes. They both have names. Then I need to cut out the table as one piece, the oval and the rectangles connected together. And finally, glue the table onto your beautiful, colorful geometric background. everything is set to make our fish bowl and fish inside of that bowl. For this part, we are going to use watercolor paint and a really cool effect with the cling wrap. As you see in your take-home packet, you have a large piece of paper and a small piece of paper. You also have a paintbrush and watercolors and a roll of cling wrap. We are going to use the big paper to create the fish bowl. We are going to use the smaller paper to create the fish in the bowl. I suggest using cool colors for the big paper and warm colors for the smaller paper. That way your fish bowl will look like it's filled with cool water, and your fish will maybe look like goldfish because of all the warm colors you use. So let's get started painting the big paper with some cool colors. I'm using blue, purple, and green. And when the whole paper is covered, and I make sure that the paint is still very, very wet, I take a piece of the cling wrap, big enough to cover the whole paper, and then I lay it on top of the wet paint. Cling wrap is kind of hard to deal with. It really wants to stick together, and sometimes it's hard to rip off of the roll, so you might need help with this part, and that's okay. But when you do have your cling wrap, you are going to lay it over top of your wet painting. Maybe rub it and pull up some pieces as well, because when this painting dries, it's going to leave a really cool texture behind. That needs to dry, however, and while it's drying, we are going to use the warm colors to paint the smaller paper. So we're going to use orange, red, and yellow. And when the whole paper is covered, making sure that the paint is still wet, we're going to cover it with cling wrap and let that dry as well. While you're waiting, it's always nice to do a quick cleanup. It should take those papers 30 minutes to an hour to dry. Magically, these are already dried and ready to go. So again, we're going to use the bluish paper for the fish bowl, and we're going to draw fish on the orange paper. But first, let's check out that texture left behind from the cling wrap. Everywhere the cling wrap was wrinkled, it left a really cool texture on the paint. Very cool. Okay, so you are going to be drawing with pencil first, and then when you're happy with your fishbowl, you are going to trace it with Sharpie. Since you can't see the pencil very well in this camera, I jumped right to using Sharpie in the video, and I decided to make my fishbowl this shape. It's an organic shape. To me, it's a fishbowl. To somebody else, it might look like, I don't know, a hot air balloon. You get to decide what organic shape your fishbowl will be. Just make sure that it fills the paper and is big enough for your fish to have a happy home. Cut out your fishbowl. You could even save the scraps for something else because this paper is so pretty. Now we need to draw some fish. I'm going to show you how to draw 3 different fish, jumping right to Sharpie, but you should really use a pencil first to draw your fish, then outline the pencil drawing with Sharpie, and then cut the fish out. So here's the first way to make a fish. Using curved lines to create organic shapes, and even some geometric triangular shapes for the fins. Don't forget to add a face and maybe some implied texture to the fish. Remember what implied texture is? That's where you use drawing to trick your eye into thinking that fish has scales on it, that it feels like a scaly texture. So that's always a fun detail to add. Here's another way to make a fish. Just a little bit different than the first one. And for this fish, I'm going to use straight lines to add texture. This project really ties everything together nicely, doesn't it? We've talked about using warm colors and cool colors. We've talked about geometric and organic shapes. We even reminded ourselves about implied texture. It's great. The only thing that this project does not have is form, because it is flat. It's not three-dimensional like that cool night light thing we made with the tissue paper. So that it does not have, but it has everything else we've talked about so far this year with our take-home projects. How cool is that? Anyway, here's a third way to draw a fish as well. I decided to make the fins long and wavy using organic shapes again. I really like all of my fish. Now I'm going to cut them out and glue them onto the fish bowl, spread out so that they have plenty of room. Here we go. Again, I feel like it would be such a shame to waste this beautiful paper we created, so you might want to save the scraps for something you make later. Or not, you can recycle them too. I'm going to glue my fish just like this. And here we go. The only thing I have to say about gluing is that you don't want to put the glue onto the fish bowl. You want to put the glue onto the smaller shape, which would be the fish. That way you know the exact amount of glue that you need and where exactly it needs to go. My fish bowl is all done and full of cute fish. Now it's time to place that fish bowl onto its lovely table that we created. Try to leave some space at the top of your picture so that your whole picture doesn't look too crowded. And when you've got the right placement, slap some glue on that fish bowl and lay it down. Definitely make sure that you take some time to smooth this picture out and be sure that there are no flaps sticking up. I hope you had a great time creating this Matisse fishbowl. It amazes me how many different things that you can create just by using shapes. See you next time.